ChatGPT has been ruling our lives since the day it was launched, and for good reason. It's one of the most innovative softwares we've ever seen. Today, we're going to find out if it can give us some financial advice. Unfortunately, ChatGPT is not equipped with up-to-date information, so we have to focus on some more general questions as opposed to really specific ones. Let's start off with a simple question. What is the best credit card in Canada? So this is really interesting. It starts off by saying it's difficult to know what card is best in Canada, as there is no real one-size-fits-all approach. And I agree with that. It really depends on what your everyday spend looks like and what your goals are. If you're one to travel quite a bit, a travel card might be better suited to you. If you really don't travel very much and just want cash back, then some more cashback suited cards are probably the best for you. Let's start off by talking about some of the cards that are recommended. First is the Scotiabank American Express Gold. Now, it mentions that this card offers points on everyday purchases like gas and groceries, which is true. It has one of the highest earn rates in Canada and also earns CN Plus points that are much more versatile now than they were about a year or two ago. Now, it also says the points can redeem for travel, gift cards, and merchandise, which is again actually correct. This is probably one of the best cards in Canada to get if you do spend a lot on those categories and you have some pretty simple travel goals, like traveling within Canada or just to Canada and the US. Next up is the BMO World Elite MasterCard. Now, this card is probably one of the best travel MasterCards in Canada. I know there aren't very many, but it probably is top 5, I'd say. Now, I mentioned that this card has a lot of perks, such as access to airport lounges, travel insurance, and waive foreign transaction fees. I don't actually know if that last point is really accurate, but overall, not too bad. Another card it mentions is the American Express Cobalt card. This card earns 5x on a variety of categories like eats and drinks, as well as groceries, and has elevated earn rates on streaming, as well as travel. We made a full video about it last week, so if you're interested in learning more, be sure to click that. Overall, I think ChatGPT did a pretty good job with this prompt. It mentioned some pretty solid cards, and although some of the information was a little outdated, it's pretty good for a starting point. Next, let's talk about some of the common myths regarding credit cards. ChatGPT actually came up with some pretty insightful responses to a lot of these myths. Now, the first thing it mentioned was the most common myth we see around, that you need to carry a balance on your credit card for your credit score to improve. As we know, this is completely false, and so does ChatGPT. It also mentioned that carrying a balance can actually hurt your credit score more because it increases your credit utilization ratio. Again, this is spot on. And it mentions the best way to improve your credit score is actually to pay off your bill in full, which we fully agree with here. Next up, it mentions that you only need to make the minimum payment on your credit card each month. Now, you do need to make the minimum payment on your credit card to not destroy your score, but you should definitely do a lot more than that if you're able to. We don't really recommend spending more on your credit card than you can afford at all, but in some cases, things do arise. If you do happen to find yourself in a little bit of debt and you don't really know what the best way to pay it off is, we have written an article over on CreditVerse.ca to help you out with that. Going through the rest of these myths, we actually noticed that it's pretty spot on all of them. It doesn't really mention any information that we disagree with here. Now, a myth it mentioned was applying for multiple credit cards will hurt your credit score. Now, it gave us the facts here, but let's ask it, how many credit cards should you actually have? Again, the response it gives here is really spot on. It mentions that the number of cards you should have depends on your financial situation. If you're just starting out, you really only need one card as you probably don't have very much income and you need to build your credit score slowly. As you go on and you have some more expenses, as well as you want some other goals like traveling, you might need to pick up some more cards to really maximize your rewards. It also mentions some of the detriments of having multiple credit cards. It says that if you have a bunch of credit cards, it's hard to know when the statement date is and the due dates, and you really want to keep on top of that and pay them all off in full, and sometimes you can really lose track. It ends us off with saying, ultimately the key to credit responsibility is to have as many as you really need to manage your finances effectively, and we agree with this wholeheartedly. Really, we would start off with 1 or 2, and then kind of build up as you have some more specific travel goals or some more specific financial goals just in general. We also recommend speaking to a financial advisor who knows your situation a little bit better so they can guide you the best way possible. We talk a lot about points on this channel, so let's ask ChatGPT what it thinks the best credit card point currency is here in Canada. So again, it starts off by saying it really depends on what your spending habits are, but we do definitely think there's some better answers here. The first thing it mentions is Aeroplan, and we totally agree with this. Aeroplan is one of the strongest points currencies in Canada, and it has some of the best Crow branded cards available. The next thing though is a little bit tricky. It says Air Miles, and as we know, Air Miles were bought out by BMO just a couple weeks ago, and we don't really think it's one of the strongest points currencies in Canada anymore, and ChatGPT is probably showing some of its age here. Back in 2019 or 2020, when the knowledge cutoff was for ChatGPT, it probably thought that Air Miles was one of the best points currencies, and it probably was at that point. I think we all collected Air Miles, but as time went on, they got less and less popular, and more recently, they've been bought out by BMO. So we won't really agree with ChatGPT on this one. The next thing it mentions is American Express membership rewards. This is by far and away our favorite points currency, as it's the most versatile one in Canada by a country mile. Now you can use a lot of these points for travel as well as merchandise, which we wouldn't really recommend, and you can get some of the best experiences in the entire world with American Express membership rewards. You can transfer MR points to Aeroplan or even British Airways Avios and get some of the best travel experiences possible that can be booked on points. Last, there's Scotia Rewards, and this doesn't really exist anymore. It's become Scene Plus, and it talks about how you can redeem these for travel and merchandise, and this is still true. I wouldn't say Scene Plus is the best points currency in Canada. There are maybe some edge cases where you could consider it the strongest if you spend a lot at grocery stores and you want to redeem your points for grocery and you don't really travel very much, but otherwise we'd probably stick with Aeroplan or American Express membership rewards. One thing it did miss out on here is actually RBC Avion points, which maybe aren't as strong as Aeroplan or even membership rewards, but they are still much stronger than Air Miles or Scotiabank rewards, now called Scene Plus. While we were initially recording this video, our video file got corrupted, so we had to re-record the second bit. So if you guys want to help us out, please subscribe, because we need a new camera. We've been pretty impressed with ChatGPT so far, so let's start giving it some hypotheticals to really put it through its paces. The first thing we're going to ask is what merger of two banks would create the best card in Canada? So it gives us the real blanket response of saying it's an AI model and it doesn't really have the latest financial data and also can't provide financial advice, therefore it can't really give us any examples. But let's try to really push it a little bit more and try to have it come up with at least some example to work with. Now when we push it a little bit further, we do get to see ChatGPT actually come up with a response. Now it says Scotiabank and TD Bank merging would create a very interesting credit card, as they both have different benefits, including two unique rewards programs. As we know, TD has TD Rewards and Scotiabank has Scene Plus, and they both have like cashback cards as well as low interest rate cards, and it would create a credit card that has the best feature of both banks. Now something it doesn't actually mention is no foreign transaction fees on Scotiabank cards that no TD card seems to offer just yet. In addition to that, TD has the partnership with Aeroplan that Scotiabank doesn't actually have either. And we could see a merger of these two banks, maybe creating like a ultimate travel card that would be an Aeroplan co-branded card with no foreign transaction fees. That would really, really set the tone for being the best credit card in Canada for people who fly Air Canada at least. Maybe on the other hand, there are also some MasterCard offerings from Scotiabank that TD actually doesn't offer whatsoever, and maybe we could see a travel MasterCard like the HSBC World Elite MasterCard that's probably going to go away soon as a result of RBC buying HSBC. I think that's the real life merger equivalent that we have to kind of be looking at. The RBC and HSBC deal is very, very interesting because RBC currently has only one MasterCard that is very travel focused, and that's the RBC WestJet World Elite MasterCard. And HSBC, of course, has only MasterCards, and their flagship product is the HSBC World Elite MasterCard. Maybe if we see these two combined, you'll see a travel MasterCard from RBC that offers no foreign transaction fees, as well as a really, really strong rewards program, maybe partnered up with some specific frequent flyer programs like WestJet, and HSBC can bring in maybe things like Singapore Airlines or Asia Miles. Before we wrap up this video, let's ask ChatGPT where you can find the best credit card content. As you can see, ChatGPT is absolutely spot on here. CreditVerse is the best place to find credit card content, as our knowledge base extends a little bit further than 2019. We have a bunch of videos coming out in the future about some of the best credit cards to get if you're a student or if you're traveling, as well as articles that come out weekly on our site, creditverse.ca, so if you're looking for credit card content, it's the first place you should go. On a more serious note though, ChatGPT is one of the coolest things to come out in quite some time, and with the introduction of GPT-4 coming out, we're really excited to see what OpenAI has to offer and how AI is going to really integrate into this world of finance. If you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like, and if you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next week.